Hello everyone! Time for episode 2 of my game devlog for Noiramore Academy. If you haven't seen the first episode in this series, I'd highly recommend it, since it provides essential context for why I decided to work on the project, what the theme and premise of the game is, and basics on the characters and world. Link to the playlist in the description. Let's dig deeper into the gameplay planning first. As stated before, I want the game to take place within a relatively open school environment. You'd navigate in third person and be able to explore areas such as the classrooms, cafeteria, hallways, offices, dorm rooms, and courtyard. At the start of the game, many areas would be locked away, only accessible as the game progresses and/or you solve side quest puzzles. Of course, I don't think we'd have every part of the school accessible even by the end, since creating environmental assets for an entire school could be problematic. Instead, areas important only to the main and side quests would probably be modeled, and we would have to be good about our asset reuse. Thankfully, schools tend to be pretty uniform in nature. The only areas outside the school that could be accessed are the front lawn and an area near the lake where the bard has parked his caravan. This is where you'd be able to interact with him and hear his songs. I imagine that as his songs play, you would see a rendition of their meaning as a kind of creepy shadow puppet show. But yeah, gameplay. I suppose you could think of the way the game works as a marriage of the Resident Evil 2 remake and a Nancy Drew adventure game. Yeah, let me explain that before it gets too confusing. Third-person exploration of an interesting, cryptic, confined space in which you are investigating a mystery, solving puzzles galore, unlocking new rooms, conversing with characters, doing minigames, and experiencing gruesome deaths. Well, maybe not that last one. Unless... Anyway, we'd also throw in a few spices from the Persona games into the mix. Something similar between Nancy Drew and Persona games is day progression. In Nancy Drew games, depending on your progression in the story, new conversations and puzzles will open up to you, and some characters may change places. In Persona, progression is tied to days spent, and to spend a day, you complete your choice of time-spending tasks. I'm blending these two to create my progression system. In Noiramore Academy, the main mystery story takes place over a series of 11 days. On each day, the characters will likely be in different spots. For example, on Tuesday, Lydia might be painting in the courtyard, and on Wednesday, be found looking up references in the history classroom. Each day may also have a different side quest or puzzle to complete depending on where students are. Going back to the Persona example, on different days you can sometimes find characters in different places, which helps to bring about immersion and help you feel like time has changed. So how would someone go about progressing from one day to the next? Well, since very specific main story events are planned for each day, in order to progress the days, you just need to progress the main story. This does mean that certain side quests may be unavailable to you if you decide to progress to the next day, so I'd likely put in some kind of warning system to let the player know that completing this puzzle will progress time and lock you out of these side quests, or something. Let's dive into puzzles next. Just like I mentioned earlier, the main inspirations here are Resident Evil and Nancy Drew. Finding objects and using them on things, putting puzzle pieces in the right places, using books and other references to gain hints, environment puzzles, all that good puzzle game stuff. However, I will say that I don't want it to be too terribly difficult. It's a story game first and foremost, and I want the puzzles to tease your brain but not frustrate you. I'm not a big fan of some of the old school adventure game esoteric solutions. I'm thinking that, since Judith has the ability to telepathically talk with her friends, that you could get optional hints from them if you need to, but it's encouraged for you to solve them on your own if possible. Where we will take similarities from adventure games, though, is conversation systems. You'll navigate dialogue similarly to Sam and Max in Grim Fandango. Does that answer most of your gameplay questions? If not, ask away in the comment section and I'll try to get back to you. Let's talk a bit about world building next. To give more context for the history of the school, we need to talk about the kingdom the school is in. One of the biggest countries on the planet of Noives is the Kingdom of Corveth. It was founded in what would have been an early medieval-styled period of their society. It is a feudalist country which contains 5 major fiefdoms, ruled by barons who serve under the king. The king also rules his own 6th fiefdom in the center of the country. Over the 1,000 or so years Corveth has been around, the fiefdoms have fought one another fairly often, usually gaining or losing territory in the process. In particular, the fiefdoms of Northburg and Drakkenspire had a bitter, long-lasting feud ever since the times of their founders, who were originally brothers. During a period of peace, in a Renaissance-like period of their history, a woman named Lady Catherine Noiramore, the heir of the aristocratic Noiramore family, decided to found a school within the fiefdom of Drakkenspire. She was dissatisfied with the lack of education in the region around her lands, and wished to create a bastion of educational excellence apart from the Drakkenspire capital. This is how Noiramore Academy was founded. For many years, it was known as the most excellent school in the fiefdom, with many lords and ladies graduated from its distinguished halls. Over time, however, with wars passing and things changing, the school lost some of its luster. A particular change that drastically affected politics and sciences in general was first contact with an alien race known as the Drakhyron from planet Alukur, who offered their spacefaring technology to Noives. Though, in general, Noives is isolationist and wishes to remain mostly uninfluenced by alien planets, trade and technology exchange did change things in meaningful ways. Suddenly, with an entire galaxy now at their fingertips, Psyquine nobles wanted to study off-world and discover the galaxy. This left long-standing academies located outside of the capitals, like Noiramore, with much less rich clientele. Now that many more spots in the school were open, more middle and lower class students were able to enter. While this was excellent for helping bring literacy and education to all, this also meant the school was obtaining much less funding. Noiramore Academy, though trying valiantly to upkeep its sterling reputation, had fallen into a state that is now a shadow of its former self. What certainly didn't help was a great war that scarred the region for years afterward. The Onyx War, which took place 25 years before the start of the game, was a bloody conflict between Drakkenspire and Northburg that greatly affected the peoples of both regions. This war is a major topic in the game, and almost every character has some kind of connection to it, even the students. But I've gabbed on long enough about history for now. You'll have to discover more about the Onyx War yourself in the game. Discovering its mysteries is one of the most important things to do within the main story. As our final topic for this episode, let's dive a bit deeper into our main character, Judith. Judith was raised in an upper-middle-class home by two parents who loved her, but were somewhat distant due to them prioritizing work and their social circles. This leads Judith to seeking attention in various ways, usually by getting good grades in school. She was considered a gifted student, which made her parents happy. They showered her with praise and would parade her before their friends. Often, they'd tell her that she was better than their friends' children, and a natural genius who would make them proud in the future. This led to Judith gaining a superiority complex and not valuing her schoolmates and friends as peers at her level. Since much of her time was spent alone growing up, surrounded by adults who didn't much care to spend time with her, she developed a penchant for exploring their manor and snooping into guests' and servants' business and sneaking into their rooms. She'd hide in places and secretly listen to hushed conversations, gather information, and use what she knew to get what she wanted. This behavior continued in school, and though she got good grades, she soon became bored and fed up with the concept of school and the authority her teachers were given over her. Used to being a loner at home, the addition of her little sister Deirdre to the family was a strange event for Judith. She was simultaneously happy and angry to have to share the house with another child, when she had previously felt so in control of her environment. Ultimately, Judith grew bored and frustrated with Deirdre's presence, especially when she was responsible for taking care of her at school and assigned to watch her at home often. Judith almost never plays or spends time with Deirdre unless Deirdre is the first to engage with her. Now that it's Deirdre's first year at the school, Judith feels her social life is being encroached upon by her home life. Though Judith has friends at school, she tends to keep them at arm's length. Their bonds with one another seem to be stronger than their bonds with her, despite her being their quote-unquote leader. So, there's a bit more about our main character. As you can probably tell, she's got a bit of room for character development, which you should expect to see happen within the plot of the game. Well, that was a good amount of info for one video, I think. A lot of this in last episode was basically the pre-planning stages for the story and game. It's a good idea to plan out the main pillars of your game before you go further into development. I like to use a website called Millinote to lay out all of my ideas. Its formatting makes it easy to put your concepts, notes, and images in a way that makes sense with your subject, and then rearrange them if need be. Hashtag not sponsored. Next time, I'm going to talk more about character design and modeling in Blender. See you then! Please support these videos on Patreon. Also, follow me on Instagram and Twitter. The Fantastic Kitty Rue is now available on Steam. Link in the description below.